All right. We're jumping right in. We're jumping right into Emily Russam's slide. She's presenting on estate. It's going to be best practices. It's going to be all about how do you go beyond the legal paperwork into the real value that advisors can deliver with estate planning? From organizing vital information to preparing heirs, the session goes far deeper than drafting wills. So, with that, Emily, I will stop sharing and I'll hand it off to you.
Yeah, thanks, Laura. And also, I know that Laura said that insurance planning is the next frontier. I think of estate planning as a big frontier. And I think of all of the amazing conversations that I've had with my clients since spending a little bit more time on estate planning, especially what I'm going to talk about today, beyond the documents, beyond just making sure that check, they have a will, trust, power of attorney documents. Really getting to know them in a way that maybe I hadn't before. So I'm coming up on my 19th year in this business, and really in the first part of my time in this business really was spent learning about investments and maybe cash flow planning and budgeting, and then diving into tax planning, and then diving into insurances and estate planning. So this is another frontier, but an area to add massive value, to get to know your clients in a different way and have these deeper conversations, understand family dynamics, uncover different assets, and really help them accomplish some goals that are going to be really helpful and useful and potentially save their heirs a lot of time and money. So I'm going to jump into a couple of resources here. For those of you who are not yet on the wait list, do get on the wait list for the estate planning tools with Holistiplan. They're so cool. I've gone into them already. I'm going to take you over here into platform. So on the Holistiplan website, before you're logged in, click on estate planning. So under platform on estate planning, and you can still join the wait list and check out the estate planning tools. So they're going to be kind of unrolling that out to different people on the wait list at different times. So love to hear your feedback if you've already been unlocked and able to get into the estate planning module. And also just understanding how this tool will fit into an estate planning support practice that you will provide your clients moving forward. So I'm going to share a bunch of ideas and resources for you today on how to integrate estate planning further into your practice. And I added this extra line here, the other new frontier. So really helping your clients with estate planning, part of it is helping them with organization, helping them feel ready and get ready to potentially support their heirs, but also to make some decisions now. So going through estate planning processes with your clients, so going through some different checklists or workbooks, we'll talk about some of those different options, will help your clients to maybe think about some, organizing some of their personal property, having some crucial conversations, maybe initiating some Roth conversion conversations, or doing some giving, charitable giving or gifting to family members. So this will unlock a lot of other topics and ways that you can support your clients, and also to better support them through different life stages. So life changes. Got a few ideas around that. So a little bit about me. I work for Archer Investment Management. I'm a partner there. Small RIA, about 220 households, 345 million assets under management. We do comprehensive financial planning for every single client. So every single client, every single year, we do tax planning and all of the holistic plan tools. We do insurance reviews, which, by the way, a lot of people join these webinars and think insurance is a boring topic or their P&C agent has that covered. But what I'll tell you is every single client I've taken through a P&C review from Holistiplan, we have uncovered areas to maybe adjust their coverages. And it's one thing that clients actually immediately implement. So even with estate planning, when we maybe uncover some action items for them to take away, it can sometimes take clients years to update their estate planning documents. It feels like this big task. But almost every single client will go call their P&C agent or go talk to a general agent and requote their P&C and kind of pick up that coverage. So that is a big area of support that I also see a lot of clients implement immediately. So we cover all of those topics with our clients every single year. So I have a team of 7 people. So I'm going to talk a little bit in here too about how to deliver estate planning to your clients. And some of you do have team members that you're able to delegate some of those tasks to. So that's something that I'll talk about as well, is leveraging your team, but also leveraging software. And as always, I'm going to be talking about leveraging workflows, processes. I'm going to share all of those tools with you today as well. So Debbie mentioned this as well, but huge kudos to Holistiplan. I was absolutely pleased to see OBBBA updated in Holistiplan in 24 hours because you have a couple of those clients that email you immediately and say, hey, we have Roth conversions planned for this fall. What do you think now? So what do we want to change about our strategy? So it's incredible to be able to get into scenario analysis and immediately start to tune up their plans. And then of course get on the wait list for estate planning and check that out. So what we want to do is bridge the gap between what attorneys are doing in creating and helping clients create these documents, or on the online softwares that your clients may be creating their documents, bridging that gap. So there are all these gaps that we're finding where advisors will think, yep, the CPA is covering the tax planning, or the attorney is covering all the estate planning, or the P&C agent is covering all of the insurance topics. And there are so many big gaps that I do feel it's our responsibility to close those gaps and help our clients implement their documents and get organized and really follow through on those crucial conversations that need to happen. So, the first thing really being that I think clients need plain language explanations and charts. So, in the Holistic Plan tool, you'll be able to create beautiful charts that show what the client's estate plan will look like and some of those scenarios. So, what happens if this spouse passes first? What happens if that partner passes first? What happens if one of their heirs can't act or cannot receive assets or is no longer living? So you can play with some of those scenarios and play that out. We know that all of the different documents, so wills, trust, power of attorney documents, are not the full picture when it comes to somebody's decisions that they might make or their personal property or their assets. So one thing that I do with every single client is I call it a fire drill. So really just walking through a balance sheet scenario and just saying what happens with each of these assets and how does it flow through or bypass their estate plan. So I just go through their balance sheet item by item and look at every single item and educate clients on what the general options are. So we're very cautious about avoiding the unauthorized practice of law, or UPL, but being able to educate our clients is really closing that gap between where they are and what the attorney is potentially doing for them, and being able to help them be able to understand what is in their current documents and what their options are, and to follow through on any adjustments or changes that the attorney recommended. One thing that I always ask for with those estate planning documents is a copy of the funding cover letter that came with the documents. Clients don't naturally upload that on their own. So typically, if you're asking for a copy of trust, will, POA documents, they're going to upload those specific documents, but they're going to forget that funding letter that maybe came as an email body or a separate letter. Asking for that and being able to then talk to them about what their attorney recommended and use that language on that walkthrough. So yes, your attorney recommended that any, savings balances with a higher balance in it should be potentially titled into the trust, and they had recommended your checking account to stay in joint name. So being able to reflect back with what the attorney had recommended, a lot of times those implementation meetings, if they have them at all, there's a lot covered, and those estate planning documents are thick. A lot of clients haven't opened those up. And so being able to do a walkthrough will help to uncover anything that they missed with beneficiary election alignment or updates or changes or funding those trusts. So how many of you have come across a client who had their documents done, had an implementation letter, and then did nothing from there? So maybe the attorney retitled the house, or put the house into the trust, but ultimately, some of the other beneficiary changes never occurred. So, really, our role in this case is to help them understand what are the potential options, what might happen with these assets if you don't make any changes, and really walking through and making sure that nothing was missed. So, I'm actually visiting a family member right now, and over there on that desk is paperwork related to a family member who had passed 6 years ago, who had opened a small bank account in a different state. And what we're doing is trying to figure out how to open a small estate in that other state to be able to potentially just clear that bank account out. So everything was handled in the current state. and no estate case was needed because everything had a beneficiary or joint owner. But there's really kind of one laggard that was out there. So we find cases like that all the time. And it's another big reason that as I'm talking to clients, I like to understand every small account and everything that seems irrelevant. So I had a client ask me once, do you care about that like really small credit union bank account that I opened in college in another state? I said, yes, I really do care about that. So helping clients get organized with a good inventory of all of their assets and doing that fire drill. What happens with this asset? What happens with this asset? But also beyond the documents, can somebody step into your shoes and handle the role that you have in the household? So that's something I think about constantly. My husband and I are getting ready to move next week. We close on a new house, and I'm setting up right now all of the utilities at the new house and pest control and all of these different things that need to happen. And I'm thinking constantly, will my husband know how to handle all of these things? So I'm keeping a record of that for him. And so sometimes clients are better about that, where maybe they've informed their partner, their spouse, maybe one other individual about how their household is handled or all the roles that they take on. But what if something happened to both of us? Now, does our executor or trustee or heirs know how to handle that? Those are some things that you can also walk through from a scenario perspective to really ask your clients, if you were no longer here, can your people access your iPhone and your email and your social media accounts? I'm going to share with you at the end of this a checklist that I've kind of come up with a lot of those different areas. Airline miles. So if any of you follow Colin Stroud, a little shout out on LinkedIn, he's always sharing, airline mile points or point systems through credit cards. Those aren't always immediately transferable. And I actually had a client go through probate last year. Her husband had passed rather suddenly in his 40s, and there were a couple of assets that weren't in joint name, didn't have a beneficiary attached to it. So he had a vehicle, a checking account, and airline miles. So that made it onto the docket for probate. So being able to then compel the credit card company, airline miles company, hotel points companies, and being able to get those points into her name, because that can be really meaningful. So just that's kind of one area of estate planning that maybe your clients haven't thought about, is thinking of that as a potential asset, especially if they've accumulated a lot of those points. So that election alignment as well. So understanding the intentions behind the beneficiary elections that they have made and the alignment with the documents and alignment with what the attorney had recommended. A lot of times I will just ask a client immediately, what do you think is in your documents right now? And who do you think are your beneficiaries right now? One of my rules is I require every single client to put their eyeballs on their beneficiary elections. And I'll tell them, log into your 401k plan, go to the beneficiary screen and actually look at it. Look at that for your life insurance. Double check if you think you have POD or TOD registration on bank accounts or brokerage accounts. Double check that you're both listed on different assets, and walk through that and create an inventory. There are a lot of times things are missed, or we think we may be named a beneficiary. We're not totally sure. So that's a requirement that I have clients go through. So helping them get organized is a big part of how we can bridge the gap as advisors. And a lot of this work too is work that the client does. So it's not a big heavy lift for us to send our clients out to double check all of their beneficiaries, call each of the life insurance companies, put their eyeballs on the beneficiary election forms, and just make sure that they know who they've listed and that's intentional. And then tracking for them anything that's not done. So if there's an unfunded trust or unassigned asset, just making sure that you're keeping track of that inside of the financial plan. We know that life changes. And I have just kind of a quick story of a client was telling me kind of offhandedly that her daughter had cancer and things were not looking very good. But what she also told me is a little bit of she was just complaining to me a little bit and venting that her daughter's husband was really pretty horrible to her daughter during this whole cancer treatment, that he really couldn't handle it. And she just said, she didn't think that if her daughter was well, that her daughter would probably divorce this man. And so she was just kind of telling me this as an aside and giving me a couple of examples. And I said, do you want to maybe talk to your attorney about this a little bit? Because ultimately, if something happened to her daughter, what happens to, ultimately the assets that would be potentially flowing to her. So what does that election look like inside of their estate plan? So they went back to their attorney and just talked to them and ultimately ended up creating a trust that would protect the assets from going to this guy that really didn't treat their daughter very well. So sometimes those little stories about life changes, relationship changes, estranged family members, or new family members, those aren't always reflected in the documents, and just helping clients to see that as they're telling you stories about their lives and providing those updates, how that might be impacted. And that life event coordination is important. So, really coordinating any life event changes with CPA, with an attorney, with any other professionals, P&C agents that are involved. So, as Megan mentioned, right, that new puppy. Okay, let's make sure that the homeowners insurance company knows about that. So, just making sure that you are helping clients to see how each life event that occurs kind of touches every piece of their overall plan. So I see our role in bridging the gap as part of that accountability. So a lot of times with estate planning, especially, clients know what they should be doing or they understand the importance of it. Yes, at some point, it's not an if, it's a when I leave this planet. Do my people know what to do? And they understand that, but a lot of clients don't really want to face that or feel that they have a lot more time. So sometimes it's a very emotionally charged topic. So I've had clients who just break down in tears, even just thinking about the possibility of them dying or their spouse passing or the probability of something happening to another family member. So it's a very sensitive subject, but it's something that I do urge you to have your clients address and maybe work through some of those emotional components or blocks to help them move forward on estate planning updates or coordination or organization of their affairs. Um, so really, as you are uncovering maybe different accounts to update beneficiaries on, or retitling assets, or even just organizing or categorizing personal property, writing a letter to their heirs, having crucial conversations maybe with each other if they're partnered up, documenting each of those steps and giving clients an action plan to follow and assigning tasks to them is just a huge role that we can take for our clients without needing to become an attorney or give advice or practice law in any way. Just providing that organization accountability is huge here. Um, a lot of clients come to me with personal property and just say, my kids can figure it out, or my beneficiaries can figure it out, or I don't really care about anything that I own. And I wanted to share a story some of you may have heard before of my father passed away when I was 18 years old, and I'm one of 5 kids. And after he had passed, my stepmother had us over and had everything out on a coffee table, just family, heirlooms, rings, things like that, and just said to each of us, each of you pick something out or a couple of things out that you might want. My brothers and sister and I are just looking at each other like, do you want dad's ring? Like, do you want dad's class photo? Do you want this? And so it just created this kind of awkward and difficult situation where we're just kind of deciding who gets what right there live at this one opportunity. And so it can be harder to do that. And one of the items that I ended up with was a ring that I have no idea who wore it, who received it, who gave it to who, what it means. And so one of the things you can help your clients do is to walk around their home and just look at their belongings and maybe think about who might they want to receive this item. If their state allows them to have a legal personal property addendum, maybe having that put together with the attorney, or really just a letter to their heirs that might not be an official legal document, but just maybe an explanation to say, this is really ideally who I might want to receive this piece of furniture that's been in the family for a long time. Here's the quick story about how I received it. Or this piece of jewelry, or this watch, or these photos, or this oil painting that I found at an antique store that meant a lot to me, and this is why it did. And so, walking through your home and categorizing your belongings, I'm going to put this back on you all to do this yourselves as an exercise. So, I'm going to just guess that of the 1,000 people in this webinar, that you probably haven't done this for yourself. So, this is just kind of a takeaway for you, is to walk around your home and think about your belongings in this way. So, who would I want to receive this belonging? Do I want to give them a little bit more information or a story? There are different organizers that can help categorize that. I've also seen apps that are out there where you can take a quick video of the belonging and you can share a quick story. So you can make a video of yourself telling that story. There's some different tools that are out there that will allow you to kind of leave a little bit more of a story and a legacy and pictures of the item. But it's also a really good time to think about purging things too. So if you have items that are in a box stored away and you realize, I really don't think that anybody's going to want this, I don't think this is going to go to anybody. I'm not enjoying it now or in my lifetime. I can't think of anybody in my family who wants this. Maybe it's time to let go of this item. And so it's also a good opportunity to potentially purge some items and to think a little bit more thoughtfully about what that might look like, and clear some items out. So a little bit later on, as an idea, having a webinar or an in-person seminar with a professional organizer can be useful as kind of, I think of that as estate planning. So part of your estate is your stuff. So thinking about how to organize that, how to organize your paperwork. So having a spring cleaning paperwork type of party with your clients and having a shred truck come to your office if you are in person and your clients are local, and having them shred their belongings. So I think of that as estate planning. These are things that we can help our clients take care of that, again, aren't a heavy lift on our end. We're not walking around documenting their belongings, but we're assigning that task to our clients to help them have that peace of mind and to feel organized and to create a much more organized estate. So there's a lot of things I can think of that you can send your clients off to do and take care of, and you have the credit of ultimately helping them move through that process. So helping your clients with personal property, there's a lot of ways you can do that as an advisor and bridge that gap and go beyond those documents and beyond just having legal documents created, and help create some impact and value. So also thinking about as you're moving through that estate conversation, this is a great time to talk about cash flow planning, tax planning. So modeling in holistic plan, some giving, gifting, understanding annual exclusion, lifetime exemptions, which Debbie mentioned. So we're going from this year 13.99 per million per individual. We're going to bump that up to 15 million next year. Thank goodness we finally got an even number. Doesn't that drive you crazy that in tax planning we're constantly dealing with kind of these odd numbers that we have to memorize every single year? Flat even 15 million per individual. And all of those updates are already listed in Holistic Plan. So maybe thinking about Roth conversion opportunities, charitable giving strategies. I think of estate planning as a good time to potentially, I'm going to skip ahead a little bit. I was looking for a slide where I talked about conversations with your clients. I'll have to send that out after. So thinking about, I have some good conversation starters I'm going to send out to you. So as I'm thinking about estate planning, thinking about your belongings, thinking about your assets, but thinking about what do I want to use in my lifetime? Do I want to potentially start some giving or gifting now? So as I'm thinking about that estate planning, exemptions and exclusions, how does that fit into my overall plan? Helping clients maybe think through that a little bit. I had a client who I had at my prior firm, and as you likely know, you can't just bring your clients with you when you move. You just kind of hope that they follow you and find you. And one of my clients followed me, found me at my new firm, and they said, the one thing that really, the most impactful thing that you ever did for us was to help us see the power of giving to our children. And they said the most meaningful thing they've ever done with money was they gifted their children each $5,000 at Christmas. And she said that they cried, the kids cried, everyone cried, and they got to enjoy seeing their kids utilize that money. To one of them repaired a porch, the other one went on a big vacation with their family, the other one just kind of squirreled it away. But helping to facilitate those conversations, I see that as estate planning. So thinking about and showing and modeling what will you have at the end? And does that feel like enough? Does that feel like too much? And what do you want to do intentionally with that money during your lifetime? So if that end number is too high, then how do you want to potentially set some new goals to potentially use and enjoy that money? And do you want to gift money that's in an IRA? Or do you want to potentially convert some of that to Roth over your lifetime and gift Roth dollars? So, how do you want to give that money? If you're going to do some charitable giving, that opens up a whole line of options of charitable giving during your lifetime, after your lifetime, or imparting some giving strategies onto your children or heirs as well. So these are conversations that we can help facilitate as part of just that overall estate planning conversation. So it used to be that I would just say, yep, check, check, check. You've got all your documents done. Great, your estate planning is done. It's not done. There's so much more that we can ultimately do. So another area that we can bridge that gap is preparing heirs for taking on key roles and taking on assets. So I'm always happy to talk to my clients' children or their heirs or other beneficiaries, or maybe people who are taking on a role. So maybe a friend or a family member that might have to take on an executor role or trustee role at some point, or power of attorney role. So being able to help prepare those heirs and decision makers for kind of that smooth transition of assets or key decisions that you want to make. So facilitating that conversation. So again, back on you all to potentially think about who your people are and what have you communicated to them? What have you educated them about? So I'm always happy to facilitate those conversations with my clients or help them with talking points to be able to maybe broach that subject with somebody in a generation above them. Maybe they're expecting to have to step into this role and wanting to gain some clarity or help them get organized. So providing them with some of those talking points, but also helping to avoid surprise executor problems in both ways. So one of my clients may be potentially needing to step into an executor or trustee role without that education or without that clarity, or forcing that surprise executor or trustee role on somebody else. So being able to facilitate those conversations. So this is, you can have an entire meeting just around the communication and the conversation and the readiness that you can give your clients and for you all as well. So facilitating also those values, those intentions, and some of those logistics as well. One of the articles that keeps popping up on social media for me is the guy who lost a thumb drive with Bitcoin passwords on it. I think if you've been on any type of social media in the last couple of days, you've seen that after I think more than 10 years, this guy threw out I don't know, SanDisk kind of thing, threw it away when their office was being cleaned and has been trying to get that back out of the landfill. I think it's worth $8 billion of Bitcoin. But being able to understand, does somebody maybe have some digital assets on a thumb drive? I think we're going to see a lot more of those types of cases where either something is lost generation to generation, or not translated. We live our whole lives online, and especially if there's a special password or keyword to get into a safe or an online portal, or maybe a pass key for digital assets like Bitcoin. Those are things that we need to potentially organize and communicate, but then also the values and intentions behind each of those assets as well. After a recent estate planning webinar, there was an advisor who had joined that webinar who might be on again today, who shared with me that he's just started to talk to his wife a little bit more about estate planning. So what happens if he goes? He's a financial planner, right? He probably handles everything in their household. And he said that when he started that conversation with his wife about estate planning, she said, "Oh, I would probably use that life insurance money and pay off the house." He said, "That's absolutely not what I would want you to do." So it struck up this whole conversation about, well, not just here are these assets that you might receive. So it's not just a conversation around here's what I have for life insurance, or here's what I have in a 401k, or here's what I have on a thumb drive of Bitcoin. It's that conversation about here's what I would essentially want you to do with it, or here's what I would maybe expect you to do with it. Ultimately, right, if he passes and she's there and she would feel better paying off the house, she might decide to do that. But that facilitated this whole additional conversation for them to understand from his angle, what would he ideally like her to potentially do? So explaining maybe the why behind the plans to to reduce some of that confusion and conflict. So there was I don't always listen to it, but there was a Dave Ramsey radio call, I think 2 weeks ago, where a woman had called in and said that she had received her mother's life insurance policy and her stepdad was trying to get that back from her and saying, I was her spouse. Ultimately, I should be receiving all of her assets. So maybe avoiding those conflicts and confusion that come up and being able to clearly explain, yes, this was intentional and this is why I'm leaving this particular asset to my daughter instead of my husband. So, and then just preparing anybody who has that type of a role, whether they're going to be a recipient of assets or step into a decision maker role, what that potentially looks like and what the logistics might look like. So I had a client who their attorney had advised them to kind of leave everything to their heirs, right? So bypass probate, have everything in POD, TOD registration, everything with a beneficiary or joint ownership. And what she ultimately said was, well, but what about any of my final bills, final expenses, anything that needs to be handled? I understand that my executor is also receiving some assets, but I want to make sure that there's not a need to give them an asset and then expect them to use some of that for, her final expenses. And so she wanted to purposely leave money inside of her estate to handle that. So sometimes thinking about those logistics as well. A couple of things to bridge the gap. There's a couple of resources. Um, I have two different legacy planners I like to send out to clients. It depends on I don't know, their personality. So one of them, these are both on Amazon. I'm Dead Now What is a legacy planner that you can purchase for your clients or just link out to your clients to buy. So this could be a no spend, but big lift kind of item, or you can ultimately cover that cost for your client to help them organize their affairs. So I'm Dead Not What, and the same company creates one that's just a little bit more PC. So if they don't have that sense of humor, Peace of Mind Planner is kind of the other one. I think that the contents are almost identical inside of each of these planners. Another resource that I've shared with my clients before, so this book, Mom and Dad, We Need to Talk, is great too. So I just had a client who, unfortunately, both of his parents have been diagnosed with some type of dementia. And so he is right now helping to try to get his parents organized, but also help facilitate some really tough conversations because both of the parents are dealing with all the emotions that come after a diagnosis and all of the changes that are coming from their living situation and the level of support that they need. But also, he's trying to kind of get a grasp on everything that's happening financially in their lives. So, this was a book that was useful to him. And I was actually sat in on a conversation with him 2 weeks ago, and I was just cheering him on the whole way because he did such a great job facilitating a great conversation with his parents. So, these are things that you can, again, send your clients out to do, some crucial conversations that maybe your clients need to have with their parents or other family members, have with each other. So I send clients out with date night conversation starters to have with each other. Like, would you use my life insurance money to pay off the house or do something different with it? What are your wishes regarding your body, your personal belongings? What are some things that maybe you don't know that I handle for the household? Or how we're organized in a certain way. So potentially hosting a shred day or professional organizer, sending out these resources to clients. This is all estate planning to me. I consider this all part of that estate planning topic that you can help support your clients on. So in order to do this, ultimately, we need to help our clients get organized, right? So that inventory of assets, so that lost credit union account or out of state bank account isn't lost, or that Bitcoin thumb drive isn't lost. So, centralizing those vital details, that's a huge role that we can play in bridging that gap. Do that for yourself. So go back to your financial plan. I hope you each have one created for yourself. Look at all those little pesky little accounts or things that maybe you've forgotten about, that Robinhood account with $15 in it. It's a lot easier for you to take care of that now during your lifetime than to leave that for somebody to sort out for yourself. We don't know when we're going to go. So organizing that balance sheet and helping to think about that fire drill and walking through what happens with this asset? What happens with that asset? What are my options? What do I need to do? Using tools such as the Holistic Plan estate planning tool, get on the wait list so you can check that out. So that's organizing and understanding the client's estate planning documents and creating diagrams for them and what if scenarios. And then the really unique aspect is Holistic Plan is creating those insights for clients that you can share immediately with them. So being able to have attorneys take a look at the documents and provide some additional insights for them, I think that's huge. That's a big way to bridge that gap without creating those billable hours with their estate planning attorney. Providing a legacy plan or a checklist. I'm also going to share a checklist with you as a resource at the end, and in the follow-up materials as well that I use with my clients. Organizing all their accounts, logins, legal documents, healthcare info, and contacts. So if you've been on a previous webinar, I walked you all through setting up a legacy contact on your own phones. Do that with your client in the meeting, or help them maybe facilitate or check on a couple beneficiaries. If you have an extra few minutes in your meeting, help them get logged into an account and check their beneficiary, or kind of get some of those items done on their checklist so that they are organized and in better shape when they've left you after the meeting. And we are in the peace of mind business. So whether it's economic headlines or reducing taxes or protecting them from, perils, all of those things are services that we provide this massive value to just see those shoulders come down in a meeting and see our clients relax and help them move forward with some of these tasks like organizing their affairs. So, in eliminating some of that chaos. So, think about some of your own client stories or Google some that will help you to better communicate the value of getting organized and getting their estate plan done. So, not just having their documents done, not just having a good place for them, not just talking to their heirs, but just really kind of knowing that if something happened to them today, that someone else, their people, can step into their shoes and run their household and handle their affairs and know what to do with their body and their belongings and their assets, and that everything is neat and tidy and organized. That's the goal. So, helping them create that structured process, you have to get organized in order to get that done. So, a resource that I'm going to share at the end of this is my workflow that I walk through clients, my checklists, templates. So, being able to then take every single client through the same process and share the same tips with them. So, assigning different tasks to clients to help them be accountable to different items that come up through conversation. So, assigning them a task. Go have this conversation with your aunt about that piece of furniture that you have. Does she want that back if you passed? Can it go to somebody different? What's the intention? What's the story behind it? So even these little pieces that might come up, helping them to be organized, that allows you to be an all-in resource and partner for your clients and bring a massive amount of value and peace of mind. That's the business that we're in. So starting small with simple checklists. So maybe just decide in every single client review and every single client that you have meeting that you have coming up, maybe just creating a beneficiary checklist on the Holistic Plan tool, by the way, to help them walk through and check all of their beneficiaries. So finding one piece of homework to assign to your clients each meeting that you have moving forward with them. So maybe take the checklist in that way and maybe break it down into, all right, this meeting cycle, if you do surge meetings or annual meetings, we're going to talk about personal property, or we're going to talk about where to store documents, or we're going to talk about what paperwork you should keep in your file and how to keep that organized and maybe help them with a shred day or a shred resource. So, or a legacy letter or something that might be even a little bit more difficult for them to maybe accomplish, but picking one of those topics and going through your next review with that. And then my last one on here, delegate or die. So leverage your team if you have that, or leverage technology, leverage software to support you. So one thing that we do with some of our estate planning tasks is we have task templates in our financial planning software where we assign out these different tasks we've already pre-written. So if we can create that to be a repeatable process, that makes things a lot easier. So I'm going to jump over to the Q&A. I did see some questions pop up here. Okay. Oh, I see P&C questions. Let me go down here a little bit here. Okay. So any thoughts on TOD account versus trust-owned account for investments, your recommendation? Typically, I will take a look at the attorney funding letter and see what they recommend. Otherwise, I'm not going to make a recommendation here because I don't want to practice law. So I'm going to potentially educate a client on what their different options are and talk about, yes, you can, this individual investment, you can own this jointly with somebody. Here's what happens. Here's pros and cons of that. You could add a TOD beneficiary to that account. You can put this inside of your trust. Here are the pros and cons of that. Very often, attorneys, I've seen them recommend putting an asset into a trust because the one additional kind of layer of support is that a trustee often can step in and act if somebody's incapacitated as well. So there's maybe a little bit of a path for a little bit earlier support or access to that money as a trustee versus if somebody's just a TOD beneficiary, that person has to have passed. So estate planning, sometimes we think about estate planning as when our clients die or when we die. But remember, right? So a couple of those documents, healthcare power of attorney, financial power of attorney, those are roles that people take on before you have passed, right? And so a trustee role also can happen when somebody's incapacitated. So very often I've sat in on implementation meetings or funding meetings with attorneys. A lot of times they will typically advise their clients to put that into the trust. But you can educate your client on why you would or wouldn't potentially do that or what might happen. That's part of what happens through that walkthrough meeting is saying, I'm going to touch each of these assets on the balance sheet. Is there maybe a reason? Maybe for an asset, somebody wants to do TOD beneficiary to a different beneficiary than maybe who the beneficiaries are listed in the trust. So that could be a potential reason as well that somebody chooses TOD or some of the pro and con with that. Can you share your estate planning checklist and workflow? Yes, 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 yes. If you know me, I always share. So I'm going to just show you kind of quickly what this looks like. My checklist that I send out to clients. Ultimately, it's just thinking about daily financial affairs. So does your person or people, do they know how your bills are paid, where passwords are kept, how to get into everything? So I have some different steps for them to think about it. So do they know who handles the pest control in your home or the lawn care or warranties that are in place on some things that you might have? Childcare, of course. So how to handle pets, children, all of those. Loved ones or belongings. Healthcare is a big piece too. I think of this as estate planning. So organizing just once a year, making a list of doctors, diagnoses, surgery dates, medications. Good time to be thinking about this as well. Document storage. So I have a link here to a safe. I've bought that for clients before. Some of my bigger clients, I'll buy them a safe and send it out to them. So we'll talk about storage of documents, electronic storage of documents, personal property, and then some main questions that maybe they want to think about and document. So they might do all of that inside of a legacy planner book, but maybe if they're not inclined to do that, I'll just kind of tell them kind of the big things to think about. If you've never done it yourself, sit down and write down who your pallbearers would be. Where do you want your ashes to go? Those types of decisions. It's actually a very jarring experience. So I would recommend that you do that for yourselves as well. What I'm also going to send out after this meeting too is my workflows for estate planning. So ultimately, if I'm going to have an estate planning meeting with my clients, what I'm going to do is ultimately upload those documents into a Holistiplan, get those insights for it, add the insights to the prep note for the meeting, review the funding letter, and so additional topics as well. We're going to look at trusted contact on their investment accounts, beneficiary details, all kinds of good stuff. I'm going to send this out to you guys, okay? All right, let me hit some additional questions here. So I always share, happy to send this out. Shout out to Pulse 360. Yeah, it's kind of a good way to create a checklist and push it out. Yes, this recording will be available for Holistiplan subscribers, so it'll be sent out as part of the replay, but there's also a playlist on YouTube that you can go search. And then share the Beyond the Documents resource. Yes, 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 yes. We will send this out as well. So for each of you, when this document comes out, walk through it yourselves. Walk through each of those items. So I know that none of you have done all of these steps. So check with your credit card mile points, check with any assets that you have, document your diagnoses, and keep all of those documents together. So go through that yourself in order to make sure that you know emotionally what does that feel like to do that so you can connect with your clients, but also what the importance might be. So that's something that I highly, highly, highly recommend that you do. And then just find a couple of things that you can potentially help your clients with. So one of the resources that I've helped my clients with is for those who are maybe unwilling or unable to dive into this topic. We've had clients who have had such a big roadblock because they have family dynamics that maybe they're not ready to address, they're not ready to make a decision. I have clients with children who say, I don't have anybody who could take my children, and so therefore I've just not named a guardian for them. So in a lot of those cases, I've helped maybe refer clients to therapy to maybe think through and work through those types of questions because, ultimately, if they don't make a decision in a set of documents or in their wishes, that decision is going to be made for them by the court, right? So we want to make sure that they are taking control of each of the decisions that they potentially have and creating less confusion for those that are there. So if any of you know the work that it takes to like roll over an old 401k or locate an old bank account if it's out of state or handle any of these assets, clients are hesitant to maybe go through those different steps, but think about how much harder that is for a beneficiary or an heir to potentially have to step into that role and just untangle that basket of snakes. So this is a really good opportunity for every client of every age to walk through a process to help organize their various affairs. So I have my clients, this isn't something that I say, okay, now we're 70 years old, we're going to handle this. I have 32-year-old clients and 45-year-old clients and 59-year-old clients walk through this same process to review their estate planning documents, make sure there have been no changes or life updates, to go through that kind of fire drill of walking through their balance sheet and making sure that all of their beneficiaries are updated, their assets are titled according to what the attorney had recommended, that they understand what's going to happen to each of those assets, that maybe they were great and they added in certain states you can have a TOD beneficiary on a vehicle. Maybe they did that with a vehicle, but since then they sold that vehicle and bought a new one. Or maybe they didn't handle that next house that they purchased, putting that into the trust. Maybe their attorney handled a property that they bought 7 years ago, but they just moved last year. So there are some things that doing that walkthrough, I like to do that every 3 years with my clients. So every single year I'll pull up, just because I already have a beneficiary review that's been done and a summary of their estate planning documents, I'll pull it up kind of quickly and I'll just ask any key changes with any of these people, any family dynamics that are important. No? Okay, great. But doing a more thorough review, which is kind of walking down the whole balance sheet and saying, is there anything new? Clients have new accounts all the time for whatever reason and forget to add TOD beneficiary or forget to maybe tell their people about a new asset that they've opened up. Clients forget to tell us about it. I have an email in my inbox today about a forgotten pension. And there's a reason why there's trillions of dollars in these unclaimed fund or unclaimed property kinds of accounts. That's another estate planning thing, right? So having clients maybe search their state's registry of unclaimed property, unclaimed assets, and uncover maybe some assets that they weren't aware of. So my client forgot about this pension. It's worth about $75,000 cash balance plan, completely forgot about it, never told us about it, and just kind of surfaced that back up. Well, think of if anything happened to them, we wouldn't have had it on their balance sheet. They didn't have it listed on their balance sheet. Their heirs might have never known about that money, right? So walking through that kind of process and just having clients walk through their lives with this lens. I tell clients this during the estate planning meeting, the initial one. Walk through your life for an entire year and think about what your people know or don't know. So if you're on the phone, you have to call your cell phone carrier and just talk to them about your account. Just ask, who else can talk to you about my account? Do I have an authorized person, authorized user? What happens if I'm not here to be able to kind of call in? Who can kind of um, handle my account with you, handle my bill? If you kind of every single thing that you touch for a year, you think about it from the context of somebody stepping into that role and handling it for you. Can they do that? Do they have the authorization? Can you do that now? For power of attorney, financial power of attorney, it's not just automatic that person can step in and act. Even our assets are held at Schwab. Schwab has an additional form that they require that power of attorney to sign. So having that power of attorney document in a vault is good, but having that already on file with Schwab and already sign that power of attorney acceptance form is just that additional step that you can take. So just having your clients think about their healthcare power of attorney or advanced healthcare directives. Are those on file with their doctors? Does their healthcare proxy person have a copy of that? Are there additional HIPAA release forms that need to be signed? Is this person able to talk to your health insurance company? So if you move through life for a year or hopefully forever after, thinking about, does someone else know how to do this and step into my shoes? You're going to get a lot of the way there and get your clients a lot of the way there and getting super organized. And I talk to clients all the time about what has your experience been watching other family members settle estates? Have you ever been in an executor role or a trustee role? How did that go? And a lot of my clients will tell me about some mess that they've had to deal with or what they've seen or witnessed personally. But some will say, you know what? Dad was really organized and left notes on everything and told me about everything. And we had a conversation before he passed, and I knew what my role was going to be. And they made that super simple. And so it's just a completely different response that you can get from your clients when you understand maybe what they've been through or witnessed or what they've seen in their family. So just thinking about what that might potentially look like. Somebody just asked how to add TOD on personal items such as cars. It depends on the state. Texas, Georgia, a few other states allow you to add transfer on death registration. Some states allow you to, you just check with the DMV and see if they have TOD registration available or joint ownership available or title into the trust if the attorney recommends that. So there are different things that you can do with cars depending on the state. I would just check with maybe, that's something that I kind of, get kind of for free advice from different attorneys that if I have an implementation or funding meeting with a client, with an attorney, especially ones that are in a different state than I normally practice in, then I'll just kind of dig in a little bit more to say, well, if they had this type of asset, what would you do? Or what types of recommendations do you typically make and why? So I've just kind of educated myself over time by different attorney conversations or understanding some of the different rules in different states. So it used to be the first 10, 11 years of my career were in New York State. I learned everything about New York State. And then I moved down to North Carolina. I live in Charlotte. And I've had clients over the border in South Carolina. So I learned a little bit more about those two states. I now have clients in 24 states because I'm fully virtual. So learning even just inheritance tax in different states or state tax limits in different states or how property is handled in different states, what the probate process looks like in different states. So attorneys in Texas, for example, where my business partner is and where I have a lot of clients now, they said that probate's really not a big deal, not a huge issue, where in other states, probate is a big, drawn out, and expensive process. So just understanding what those rules are state by state, I would just check with the DMV and find out what the titling options are with vehicles. But I would also, next time you have a funding meeting with an attorney, or if you just happen to have a conversation for another reason with an estate planning attorney, just say, what do you generally think about cars? How do you typically handle that? And why would you or wouldn't you maybe put it into a trust or own it jointly or add a beneficiary to it or just let it sit in the estate? So is there a specific department person? I'm not sure, Gail, what the question is. I don't know if you want to add more clarification. If you mean for vehicles, I would just check with the DMV on that or talk to the attorney and see what they tend to. What if there's no funding schedule? So Carol asked, I'm thinking you mean what the attorney provides, funding recommendations for the trust or implementation conversation. I just email the attorney. So I'll just say, hey, I saw that you prepared the documents for this client. Would you mind providing the implementation summary or funding summary, funding letter that may have come along with the documents? And sometimes they'll surface that back up and share it. For some reason, the clients don't always hold on to those or remember to upload those or even know that they existed. I've had clients tell me, my attorney didn't provide that to me. And then they uploaded, 180 pages and I found it within their documents, right? So it may exist. If not, the attorney can create one so they can take a look at the documents and take a look at the notes and maybe look at the intentions and provide that letter. Worst case scenario, let's say maybe their attorney is not practicing anymore or that it was not created and they're not going to create it for them. What you can ultimately do is summarize their documents in holistic plan, right? So create that summary for them and then walk through, and you can ultimately share with your client, not advice and not recommendation, but ultimately what are the typical options here? And clients will typically then self-select what they'd like to do. And then you just create a task for them to say, great, in our meeting on such and such date, you decided that you wanted to add POD registration to your bank accounts. These are the 3 places you have bank accounts. And then even I have somebody on my team who will pull together generally what that process might look like at each bank or create an action item for each of those bank accounts. Maybe this is a good opportunity to consolidate and no longer work with 3 banks. So just thinking about kind of their whole big picture. But if they don't have it, just educate them on what their different options are and then help them see that through and implement those changes. Is there a therapy group, licensing, or specialty to recommend? I know not all therapists are the same. So I tend to love financial therapists. So going to the FTA, so Financial Therapy Association, and maybe finding somebody who's equipped to talk about money issues. So I would check the FTA for that. All right. So Laura, you jumping on? I think that might be my red light. Okay.
No red light. All only green lights for you, Emily.
Yeah. Thanks, Laura.
All right. No, thank you so much, Emily. That was a really incredible presentation. I learned so much about estate. So thank you for jumping on today. And we still have 600 people on. So if you could drop a comment in the Q&A for Emily, just showing her some love on her presentation. I know she puts a lot of love into them. So thank you, Emily. Appreciate you as always.
Thanks, Laura.